U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your questions, and it's good to be back on time today. I'm going to go ahead and spend some time, so a good amount of time today, talking about a really good topic that I know you will be interested in. It may even take us 2 days, so it may take us today and tomorrow to get through it. So you're already out of status here in the US. This is a question I get so often, and it is marriage the only way to get the green card in the US when you're out of status? Of course, if you're one of my friends, you've been tuning in often, you'll know what my answer is. Of course not. It's not the only way. However, keep in mind that there are other ways, but we have to determine whether you qualify. And this is where the consultation is going to be very important when we're trying to determine whether you qualify for other options when you are already out of status. And I'll tell you, even today, so I consulted with someone today who thought that the only way they could qualify is through their adult citizen child. They didn't have a relationship with their adult citizen child, and there was no mistreatment by that adult citizen child. And so they thought, well, can I apply through that child anyway? Or is there another way? And of course, I was able to find another way by evaluating the details, the circumstances of this individual. So I know a lot of attorneys, they will just touch on the surface. Are you married to a citizen? Do you have an employer who wants to sponsor you? Are you in status? And sometimes, even if you're not in status, they can't help you. And that's not what I do in these consultations. The consultations are detailed consultations, and I ask relevant questions, not only about your marital status to find out if you have a citizen spouse. I mean, it's important if you do, but I touch on other circumstances, especially where I don't see immediate options. I don't see any options based on family. I don't see any options based on an employment sponsorship. Then the next question is, you have been here out of status. I want to know your story. I want to know what brought you to the US. What have you been through? Because many individuals who have been here without status, they have through so much, because a part of living without status means that you have to depend on certain people to get by. And sometimes you do have to live in the shadows, or be at the mercy of individuals who may not be the best types of individuals. They may be straight up evil people, and you may find that out later on. And based on those circumstances, I can determine whether you qualify for other options like the T status, which the T status is for victims of trafficking. Now, victims of trafficking, you've heard me say this before, trafficking comes in different forms. And they explain it very clearly under immigration law, what qualifies for the T status. And you'd be surprised at how broad the definition of trafficking is. And many people start out thinking there's no way they have been the victim of trafficking. And by the time I find out their circumstances, I find out they have been. Like the individual I spoke to today, they thought they qualified through child, and if they didn't do it through citizen child, there was no other way. But then I dug deeper, and they talked to me about coming here. They ended up overstaying their status because they were with an abusive individual who they never ended up marrying. And then they had to jump from that abusive situation to the mercy of a friend who at first was great, lured them to come work for their company, their construction company, and then stop paying them. And then to justify not paying them, they started to say, well, they're giving them housing, they're giving them food, so they don't have to pay them. Furthermore, they have to keep working for them, because if they don't keep working for them, they're going to call immigration on them. And guess, this is trafficking. this person did not see themselves as a victim of trafficking. And this is why I am on here every day educating people about what trafficking looks like. And this is a form of trafficking where they are forced to work for an individual because of a threat, the threat that they're going to deport them, and also coercive tactics like telling them they don't have to pay them, they have to work for them for free because they're already giving them housing and food. So if that is, let's start with that option, right? If you're out of status and you've been through a situation like that, then you could very well qualify as the victim of trafficking. And it doesn't necessarily even have to involve just threats about your immigration status or reporting you to ICE, but it could involve other things like they will harm you, they will, or where are you going to go? What are you going to do if you leave here? You will never find another job, or they will make sure you don't get another job. Even abuse of the legal process is considered a coercive tactic used to force you to work. So abuse of legal process, that they'll, if you leave this job, they're going to take you to court and they're going to sue you, and because you're undocumented, they will win in court against you. That's a coercive tactic, and it's also abuse of legal process. So, it's circumstances does not have to be the same in every situation. And this is where the consultation is very important, because you can leave it to me as the attorney to be able to analyze your facts and determine whether what happened to you qualifies as trafficking. What you need to know here is that if you are in a situation where you felt stuck, because you felt like you could not leave, maybe because of the attitude towards you, maybe because of straight up statements made against you, maybe because of your fear of what would happen to you if you left, the consequences that would follow. If you were in a situation like that, you felt like you were mistreated and you felt like you were afraid to leave, you didn't feel like you were free to just get up and leave, then this could be qualify you for the T status. Now, the T status is a special type of status for victims of trafficking, and trafficking, it comes in different categories, but we break it into two main categories: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Now, with labor trafficking, with labor trafficking, it's what I described earlier. You're forced to do some form of work for an individual. It does not have to be some people. So some people, they are, for example, in the household with a relative, and the relative maybe promised them things if they came to live with them, and then they, maybe promised them to send them to school, promised to get their papers, and then when they got to the house, they had to do housework, they had to do the babysitting in the house, they had to do the cooking, they had to do the cleaning. That can be considered work as well. So don't think because you didn't work, because you didn't get paid, or it was not called a job. If you were placed in a situation where you didn't sign up for that, but then you felt forced to have to do it, that can qualify you for the T status here. It's all stated in the USCIS policy. All of this is there, that these individuals qualify. And what we do is, when our clients, when our individuals become our clients, we're able to look at their circumstances, look at what happened to them, and then take the legal authority that is available to present to the USIS to show that they qualify for the T status as victims of trafficking. So if you're placed in a situation where you did not want to be there, but you felt afraid to leave, or you felt stuck, you felt like you were going to face some form of consequences if you left, this can qualify you. Now, I also want to, so I just mentioned, I gave you some examples of labor trafficking, but there are also other forms of trafficking, like sex trafficking. Now, when we think about, I think this falls within the type of trafficking that is most covered in the news. And so people think that they can't be the victim of trafficking because it didn't involve sex, or it didn't involve being tied up or restrained somewhere. However, sex trafficking also comes in different forms. It can even come in the form of an intimate relationship, or a relationship that where you used to be intimate partners, but now you're the unwilling individual in the relationship. You can't leave though, because this person may be threatening you. They may be holding on to your papers. They may be keeping you in the house. They may be keeping you under their control in some way, by threatening some consequence. And because of that, you feel like you can't leave the situation, and you have to continue to provide, do acts against your will for this person. So if, for example, if it's an intimate partner and now it's turned into a domestic violence situation where you're forced to give them sex, if you're forced to perform sex acts for this individual, you don't want to, you're not willing to, but you feel like you have to. This can also fall under sex trafficking, right? So it's both, in cases where, and you do have cases, by the way, the ones that we see on in the media, that are, it's covered by the media, where you may have been taken from another country. You may have been, you may have had who sold you, or exchanged you for certain things of value from other individuals. That does happen. However, there unconventional types, forms of trafficking that is not often covered. And sometimes even law enforcement doesn't believe it to be trafficking. And this is an example of this, is where you have an intimate partner, or someone who has forced you into that situation that you didn't want to be in. So determine you qualify, you can be out of status here. If you cross the border without permission, you still qualify for this. If the person who did this to you, if they could be undocumented themselves, they don't have to be a citizen or a resident. They themselves don't have to have legal status for you to qualify for this. So anybody, if you are out of status, you qualify. And if you qualify, once you get approved, it means that you're able to get your work permit for 4 years. Your relatives also get to have status with you, whether they're outside of the US or in. If they're outside of the US, they get a special visa to come into the US. And that's called the T visa, right? So with that, you come into the US after you've been approved, they come in as your derivatives. So the individuals, the relatives that qualify will be your spouse. They will be your parents if you yourself as a victim and you're under 21. They will be your children who are under 21 and unmarried. They will be your sibling if you're under 21. Your sibling who is 18 and unmarried can qualify for this, and your spouse can qualify for this. If you're 21 or over, your spouse and your children can qualify for this, whether they're outside of the US or they're in the US. Once you get approved for this, they all do get this status along with you. So the relief not only goes from you, but it extends outward to family members as well. Now, it doesn't just stop there with that temporary status. It also, you can then get your permanent residence. So once you get approved, you have to be in the country for 3 years continuously, to be able to apply for the green card. However, there is a process called early adjustment of status that we do pursue for our clients as well. Excuse me. All right. So that's the T. I started with the T status. I'm going to cover some others, right? So let's go on to asylum. So we see a lot of Jamaicans are crossing through the border right now, because there's a lot of violence. The economic situation isn't good. And because of that, they're trying to seek relief here in the United States. For those individuals that don't have a way to come into the US with a visa, they're doing it through the border. And whether you come in with a visa or you come in through the border, what the relief there is likely, one of the forms of relief can be asylum. All right. Now, not everyone who is running away from their country can claim asylum or be approved for asylum. And I'm going to tell you who gets approved for asylum. So, asylum is where you have a credible fear of persecution, or you yourself have experienced past persecution in your country based on certain groups, certain memberships that you may be a part of. So, one is the persecution, the threats. Maybe there are threats, maybe you've faced harm, maybe, and persecution can cover also maybe you've been locked up, locked up in jail. If you've faced these kinds of persecution because based on your political opinion, based on your race, based on your nationality, or based on your particular social group, then you can qualify for this. And also, if I didn't mention it before, political opinion. I don't know if I did, but I'm going to say it again. So your political opinion or a particular social group. That's a part that can be defined. It has multiple definitions or multiple ways of determining whether you are the member of a particular group, just based on we have to look at certain facts here. So, being the member of a particular social group means that you may be, there's a group in your country that are targeted, being harmed, being locked up, being persecuted based on laws. The case, then you could qualify. Now, when you're looking at particular social groups, it has to be an identifiable group, something that is evident to the community. And then the characteristics that you hold within this group has to be unchangeable. These have to be characteristics that are belong to this group and it cannot change, right? So, for example, your sexual orientation may be one of those. Another is, for example, women who have been subjected to female circumcision. That what has happened to them makes them a part of that particular social group, and it cannot be changed, right? Once they have been the victim of female circumcision, or I should say female genital mutation, um, or mutilation, then it means that you will forever be that a victim, or rather a survivor of what happened to you. And in certain countries, that is a reality for certain groups. And if you fit within that group, or you have a fear that you're going to become a part of that group, for example, women who have not been a victim yet, but they are marked for that type of brutal procedure, they can then claim asylum because they have a credible fear of persecution. They have a fear of being mutilated if they stay in their country. And so they have to flee the country to be able to avoid that kind of persecution, right? So those are examples of how a particular social group can qualify for asylum. Now, it's not just that group, right? That's a defined group that has already, individuals who fall within that group have received asylum in the United States. But it's going to depend on what's going on in the country. So, for example, in Jamaica, if you identify as a gay individual or a lesbian individual, then you may first face persecution in that country, because that is something that is against the law, and you're not necessarily protected under the law. So that qualifies you as the member of a particular social group that's unchangeable, that can then get asylum here based on that fear or past persecution. If you have been the victim of domestic violence, so in certain countries, domestic violence is prevalent, and not only is it prevalent, but it is that is even acceptable in the country. And the police may not enforce the laws, or there may not even be laws there to protect certain individuals from the domestic violence. So for example, if in a certain country, if you're a married woman who cannot escape your marriage, because under the law they protect the abusive spouse over the abused spouse, then that could mean that you fall within a particular social group to get asylum based on the domestic violence. Because on a whole, that abused individual falls within a larger group of individuals who identify with the same group. So that's how being the member of a particular social group covers other people who don't, it's not, persecution is not necessary other, so people who are not being persecuted based on other categories like political opinion, nationality, religion, or race. If they are being targeted based on other characteristics that they share with a group, then you can possibly qualify for asylum. And so this is what I help my clients with as well. So if you came through the border, or you've come here on your visa, then this could be an option for you. Keep in mind that you have 365 days after the date of your entry. Whether you came through the border or you came in with a visa or other type of status, you have 365 days after the date of your entry to apply for asylum. And if you don't apply for the asylum, you miss the deadline, then it gets harder to get the asylum, because what they're going to look at is they're going to look at what prevented you from applying within the time. Now, there are two ways to argue that the deadline, you should be forgiven for not applying within the deadline. One is if you have faced extraordinary circumstances that justified the delay, and that then again you still show that once, as soon as you could apply, you did apply within a reasonable time after the deadline. And then the is if there are changes, so the changes in circumstances have now opened up the door for you to apply for asylum. So say you're here on a student visa, you didn't apply within the time that you've been a student here for asylum, but then your country starts to experience turmoil that now makes you vulnerable to being persecuted in your country, and so circumstances have now changed, you could then apply for asylum in that case. So it's very important that, if you are coming into the country, whether the border or whether you have already come into the country, to consider whether you want to apply for asylum. And, with asylum, it means that you don't have to go back to your country. You could stay here, and you could remain here until a decision is made in your case. Now, the asylum is backed up right now, so we are seeing processing times that are spanning over years, unfortunately. So we see about 2 to 5 years for the entire process to go through, depending on whether you're going through the court, which is called defensive asylum, where you are applying for asylum as a defense to removal, or where you're applying for affirmative asylum, where you have come here, you've either come here, you've declared it at the border, and you have not been referred to immigration court, or you've come here on a visa and you want to now claim asylum. So once you do apply for asylum, at 150 days past the time you apply for asylum, you're able to then apply for the work permit. At the 180-day mark or afterwards, they are able to issue the work permit. So you do, for the years that it is estimated, so that it usually takes for the asylum process to move forward, you are able to have that work permit, and be able to renew your work permit until the decision is made. And once you're granted asylum, you're able to then go ahead and apply for permanent residence. Once you've shown that you've been here in the US continuously for 1 year, you can apply for permanent residence. So the asylum doesn't just leave you in a temporary status, but it leaves you in it gives you the option to then pursue permanent residence and then become a citizen eventually. Now, let's talk about VAWA. What if you're here already, you're out of status though, and you have a US citizen or legal permanent resident spouse, a parent, if you're under 21 or under 25 in some cases, or a US citizen son or daughter who's 21 and up, and perhaps the reason you have not moved forward in your case is because you either have an existing application or you've never applied because you're being mistreated by them. They may be holding it over your head. And mistreatment may just be verbal or it may be physical, but physical isn't required to qualify for this only. It may be that they're controlling. It may be that they're using your immigration status against you to keep control of you. If you're experiencing this kind of situation, there is VAWA to apply for your own work permit, your own green card, and even a travel document that gives you the flexibility to be able to leave and come back into the country. No, and come back, leave for short trips, not for any extended periods of time, but it allows you to come back if you need to travel, all on your own without this relative. This is very confidential and it does not involve them in the least. They don't have to sign anything. They are not going to get a call and nobody's going to have to testify. So they won't have to give testimony and you give testimony. And it's a back and forth between the parties. They don't do that. They do the opposite. They make sure it's confidential because they want to make sure you're protected in the process, and they make sure that this is not disclosed outside of the agency, which is the USCIS, where the petition goes into, because they know that if it is disclosed to the wrong individual, that this can mean that you face retaliation. Now, the way that this works is that you apply for VAWA status along with, so the VAWA status allows you to be in a protected status while your green card process is moving forward. And this qualifies. Now, this whole live that I'm doing is focusing on individuals who are without status here in the US. So these are ways to fix your status. So it does apply to those who are out of status, whether you're overstayed your visa or you cross the border without permission. This will qualify you, right? So that the VAWA is one. So if you're going through the situation, this is where you need to go ahead, give us a call, schedule an appointment, and we'll be more than happy to evaluate your case and then get started. Now, I do want to say one thing here, and it's that while marriage, is marriage the only way to get the green card? Absolutely not. When you're out of status, it's not. However, if you are the spouse, we'll talk about it just because I want to tell you when you can fix your status through a spouse and when you can't. Now, if you're here out of status, your spouse has to be a US citizen for you to qualify to fix your status through the spouse. If your spouse is a permanent resident, it will not work. You will not be able to fix your status or get a work permit through adjustment of status. They will have to become a citizen first before that can happen. Now, and other ways that you can fix your status through a relative is through a parent. So if you have, if you're under 21, so a lot of people have the misconception that once their kids turn 18, they can't help apply for them. No, if the children are considered under 21, right? And so if your child is 21 and you're a US citizen, you can still apply to get your child's status fixed. And also, if you have a son or daughter who's 21 and up, then they qualify you. They can apply for a petition, and you can apply for adjustment of status to get your status fixed. Now, with those processes that I just mentioned through U.S. citizen relatives, if you're in the U.S., you're looking at a 6 month to over a year process to get that done. All right, so I covered some of those ways to be able to fix your status. There's also what's called the U visa. Now, the U visa is if you've been the victim of a certain crime, that usually resulted in your physical or mental abuse. So, for example, assault, stalking is one, domestic violence, robbery, so if and similar types of crimes, kidnapping. So if you have been a victim, then and it has been reported or it is a reportable crime, then you could qualify for the U visa as the victim of a crime. Now they've recently changed the way the procedure, because the processing time is taking 5 to 10 years right now, so very long process. So to alleviate that length of time, what they have done is they have said that if you apply, you follow all the procedures, and you properly submit all the evidence, they will issue a bona fide determination letter that will allow you to then get your work permit. So there is a faster way. So you get the work permit in a shorter time. However, we're still seeing them backed up where it's taking over a year to get those work permits through this new process that they've implemented. All right, so I have covered in summary the ways to fix your status. I'm going to quickly go through some questions here as I do have to head to an appointment, but I will be back tomorrow. And this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. Based on all the information I gave you today, I would like to get questions, follow-up questions about this so that I can address those questions you have. So come with your questions tomorrow so I can answer those questions. And it can be anything that's immigration related. It'd be nice if it touches on subjects like this, but it's okay if you ask other questions. So how can I get permanent residency without marrying or the job sponsoring me? So I just went over a whole bunch of options. So go ahead, rewatch this live. It's gonna be posted. What happened to Instagram today? Nothing. I'm here. So I'm also on Instagram. Good day. Overstay my visitor visa, but my son is a permanent resident. What can I do? So permanent residents can't sponsor parents. They'll have to become a citizen first. Hi there, Sam. Good morning. And it's nice to see you in Los Angeles. When your VAWA case has been transferred to another office, what does it mean? What's the hope? So the hope is that it will make processing times faster. So they're trying to delegate the work to different offices to move the process along faster. I filed, let's see. So can I fix my status on an H-1B? So since you're already out of status, your options are limited at that time, but the entire live is talking about situations where you can fix your situation. So, or fix your status. So go ahead and give us a call. That's the way here. Give us a call, because the way I work in my consultations is I not only just look at what you are thinking about, but also what options may be available to you. As married and I went to get married without getting a divorce, how will that affect me, and who do I go about getting? So if you can't do that under immigration, you have to get divorced first. You can't get married without getting divorced. That's not allowed here in the US, and they're going to deny your application, and it's going to also invalidate your marriage. So you want to make sure you do it right. All right, on Instagram, I'm going to just scroll through quickly to answer some questions. Do you do immigration? I think that's trials. Yes, absolutely. I do assist clients to defend against deportation. So you can always give us a call, do an evaluation, and we can see if you can qualify for representation. How long does it take to receive the first document when all your paperwork is submitted for a green card through marriage? So I would say about 2 to 3 weeks after. Why is it when filing and everything is accepted, but they asking for repeated documents for the affidavit of support? So it may be that there's some, you may think nothing is missing, but they may be sending you because they don't think you qualify and they're trying to give you a chance to improve the document so you qualify. So if you're getting an RFE for the I-864, be wary because they may be telling you you don't qualify and that you need to fix that before they'll move forward with your process. What if you marry someone and you thought your pages was in, but it happened that COVID came, the person passed away, then you realize it was done. Can your status be adjusted? Yes, if your spouse is a citizen, but you have 2 years to do it. So do a consult with us. Let's see what happened here, and if those 2 years have passed. As a widow, you can still qualify through a U.S. citizen spouse. So go ahead and give us a call, and let's do the evaluation and make sure you qualify, and we can get that in for you. All right, I have to head out. Thanks so much, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow, and tomorrow I'm going to dedicate all to questions, all to questions. So come back tomorrow so that I can talk to you about your questions. All right, have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.